Welcome to day one of Luminosity Authentic Moments course. I am so excited to have you here. We are going to have such a great experience, and I know you're going to learn so much if you just stick with me, especially through these first couple days. Today we're going to be covering camera basics and how to shoot in manual mode. Manual mode means that you choose all of your own settings instead of letting your camera choose them for you. Now, I realize that this topic can be so confusing, but please stick with me. I'm starting with this topic for a reason, because once you know how to work your camera in manual mode and use every setting, it opens up a world of possibilities for your photography. Manually choosing your settings allows you to make the picture look exactly the way you want it to in camera. Learning to shoot in manual mode basically puts you in charge. Is your photo too dark? Quick adjustment. Is it too light? Quick adjustment. You want your subject to be a silhouette or your subject is blurry? No problem. Once you have these skills, it'll be really easy to adjust and you'll know exactly what to do to get your picture where you want it. I promise you that being able to shoot in manual mode is going to make a world of difference in your photography, and it's only going to be the first 2 days, and I know you can stick something out for 2 days and then you're going to get it, and then it gets so much easier and so much more fun. So 2 days, give me 2 days and you've got this. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is ISO. ISO is how sensitive your camera is to light. So ISO equals light sensitivity. ISO is changed depending on how much light you need to take a well-exposed photo in the environment around you. ISO is a range of numbers, starting around 100 and going up beyond 2000. Low ISO numbers, like 100, 200, and 400, are going to be used when your camera does not need to be very sensitive to the light around it. Meaning you'll use low ISO numbers when the environment you're shooting in is bright. So outside in the middle of the day means low ISO because there's so much light around you that your camera doesn't need to be very sensitive to the light. Lower ISO numbers also mean less grain, and that means less grainy images. Here are some examples. High ISO numbers, 1250, 2000, 3200, 4000, etc., are used when you need your camera to be more sensitive to the light around you, meaning you'll use high ISO numbers when the environment you're shooting in is darker. So if you're shooting in a darker room or shooting at night, you will use a high ISO because the camera needs to be sensitive enough to pick up smaller amounts of light around you. A higher ISO helps you to see it in the dark, but it also means larger grain or grainier images. Here are some examples. Very closely related to ISO is shutter speed. The shutter speed is the length of time that the camera shutter is open to take the photograph, or the length of time that the sensor is exposed to light. The shutter speed is measured in tiny amounts of time, just a fraction of a second. Now I need you to think about math for just a moment. 1/100th of a second is a longer amount of time than 1/1000th of a second, right? 1/250th of a second is a longer amount of time than 1/500th of a second. Okay, let's keep all that in mind. When you have a longer shutter speed, you will allow more time for light to come into your camera. Therefore, the image will be brighter. If you have a shorter shutter speed, you will allow less time for light to come into your camera. Therefore, your image will be darker. The other thing that shutter speed affects is motion. So if you want to stop a child in motion, you need to use a faster shutter speed. When I'm taking pictures of a kid, I try never to go under 1/160th of a second. However, usually I try to be a lot faster than that even, like maybe 1/800th or 1/1000th of a second or faster. That way I'm sure that I'm not going to get blur as they're running and moving. If you want some motion blur, like a blurred car behind your kid or your child blurry as they run across the room, then you'll use a slower shutter speed like 1/100th or 1/60th of a second. So a slow shutter speed will result in a brighter image, but will also be more likely to have motion blur. A faster shutter speed will result in a darker image, but will stop motion better. Both options are really useful depending on your environment. Let's talk about how ISO and shutter speed relate to each other now. ISO and shutter speed are used in conjunction to get a well-exposed image. When I'm talking a well-exposed image, I mean an image that is bright and beautiful and true to color. So let's review. If you have a bright environment, you want a low ISO and fast shutter speeds. If you have a darker environment, you want a high ISO and lower shutter speeds. Okay, let's take a really short quiz. This image is too dark. What should I do with the ISO? What should I do with the shutter speed? This image is too bright. What should I do with the ISO? What should I do with the shutter speed? This image is too dark. What should I do with the ISO? What should I do with the shutter speed? Today I want you to try playing around with the settings we've talked about. Switch your camera over to M mode. M stands for manual, and you probably have been shooting on A mode, which is auto, but I want you to switch over to M mode. Then adjust your ISO and then your shutter speed. I always start with ISO because the lower the ISO, the less grainy your image. So I like to get it as low as possible and then adjust my other settings from there. Start playing around with your settings and get a feel for how they all work together. Within just a few months of me starting photography, I didn't even have to think about my settings. I can adjust them in my sleep. I can walk into an environment and I can automatically know right where to set my settings, and then only minor tweaks from there. I promise it gets so much easier the more you practice. The photo challenge for today is outside. Interpret that however you'd like, but I do want you to take your picture using the things that we've talked about today, which means shutter speed and ISO. Use them. Post your favorite photo under video 1 on our Facebook page. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. If you're confused, chances are others are too. So I am here to help. Over the next 2 weeks, I'm completely an open book to you, and I want to be there to help guide you through this. Remember, today is probably the hardest day. Tomorrow is even easier because we're only talking about one manual setting, and then we're going to be talking about fun stuff after that. So stick with it. I know it's confusing, but start playing with it, stick with it. We are going to get through this together, and you are going to come out an amazing photographer. See you tomorrow.